Hello and welcome to another episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I'm your host Eric Smith, and I'm continuing my horror novel reviews for October. But of course, they're books you can read anytime. In my last review, for those of you who watched it and watched these things in order, I teased the next book that I was going to review, which is what I've got here right now. Saying that it was one of my favorite authors, someone who always immediately goes to the top of my to-be-read pile. And of course, as always, I don't know why I'm teasing this now, since if you've read the title of this review, you know what I'm talking about, which is Last of the Albatwitches by Brian Keene. I don't know if that's how you pronounce that. There's going to be a few things I pronounce horribly in this review. So, I received this the other day, and it took me just 2 days to read it. It's very short. Could have done it in one if I'd had the time. And what this is two novellas starring Brian Keene's character, Levi Stoltzfus. And here we go, we're back to my little hand-lettered signs. That's his name, Stoltzfus. I believe I asked somebody how to pronounce it, but that was also online. They kind of wrote it out phonetically, but that doesn't mean I interpreted it correctly. So, Levi Stoltzfus is one of Brian Keene's recurring characters. He is an ex-Amish paranormal investigator or occult detective, or someone who detects and investigates occult and paranormal things. Whatever you want to call it. And he has been in, as I said, a few of Brian Keene's things, and I'm going to actually look here. There's a little part that I skipped over. Let's see. So, I don't know why I need to look at this. So Levi has appeared in the novel Ghost Walk, the novel A Gathering of Crows, 2 novels coming up, Invisible Monsters and Bad Ground, and some other things. Those are the highlights. Anyway, so this, as I said, this is 2 novellas. The first is The Witching Tree, and Levi gets called in to figure out what's going on when, basically a tree is killing the crap out of people. And the second story, Last of the Albatwitches, again, Levi gets called in to investigate what may or may not be a sighting of an Albatwitch, or some people think it might be a skunk ape or a Bigfoot, but apparently the Albatwitches are local legends to the area in Pennsylvania. So that's basically what's going on. He gets called in to investigate a couple of different things. Brian Keene, one of my top 3 authors. Absolutely. As I said earlier, whenever a new Brian Keene comes out, whenever I get a new Brian Keene anyway, it immediately goes to the top of my to-be-read pile. This was no exception. Oh, I should mention, Deadite Press is the publisher. And I could go on and on and on about Brian Keene and his books. One of the reasons is that pretty much everything he writes ties together, in some way. Could be just a little tiny tenuous connection, or, as in this case, you've got a character that stars in a number of different stories. It even mentions that he's in an alternate version is in Clickers vs. Zombies. And that's the thing with Brian Keene's books. He has this mythology. I don't know what it's officially called, but it involves a group of evil beings called, well, we humans think they're evil because they're trying to destroy us, but the 13, and there's the Labyrinth. The Labyrinth is sort of a dimensional maze that leads to all these alternate worlds, so that you can have Levi in his world, the Levi that we're reading about generally. This is all sort of DC Comics, Crisis on Infinite Earths kind of thing. So we'll say the Levi we're reading about in this book, and in Dark Hollow and in The Gathering of Crows, we'll say he's Earth A. But again, he's also in, or a version of him is in Clickers vs. Zombies, which might be Earth B. And then, and there's a lot of that going on with the different characters from Brian Keene's books. You have somebody from this particular book who dies. That same character pops up in a different book because it's an alternate Earth. It goes from Earth Q to Earth V. Now, the nice thing is you don't have to read everything. You should, because Brian Keene is a great author. But you don't have to. There are some things. His first novel, The Rising, has a sequel, City of the Dead. It's two. You could read them separately, but why bother? It's a book and its sequel. Read it. And there's also, in this particular case, The Rising, Selected Scenes from the End of the World, which is a short story collection that sort of tells little vignettes of what's going on around the world during The Rising. But I'm not reviewing those books. I'm just sort of explaining how it all is going to tie together. Even his short stories have these little connections, and it's great. The nice thing about this, and wait, yeah, there's the little Amish buggy. Levi's a great character. As I said, he's ex-Amish. He still dresses Amish, I guess, and drives a horse and buggy. But he also uses a cell phone and a computer. And basically, he's a guy who is a practitioner of powwow and some other forms of magic and such, who just wants to help. You know, he's a good guy. Not everybody knows about his specialty, but a lot of people still come to him for medicinal cures and things. And then those people that do know that he helps with these strange occurrences can get his help with that. So the two stories in here, The Witching Tree and Last of the Albatwitches, have both been printed before in limited edition hardcovers. I actually have one of those. The Witching Tree, I believe it was, is in a collection called Is There a Demon in You? Some different authors in there. I believe are all sort of stories of possession. I haven't read it. I've had it since it came out, and it's just one of those books, for some reason, I just haven't gotten around to. A lot of great authors in it. But that's where The Witching Tree came from, and then The Last of the Albatwitches, I believe, was its own limited edition hardcover. So it's nice to have them together in here, and they're both really nice stories. If you're not familiar with Brian Keene, excuse me, if you're not familiar with Brian Keene, you can read these and enjoy them for what they are. A couple of nice stories about a great character, very interesting character. You'll get some of his mysterious background. There are things that people like me who've been reading everything Brian Keene's done that still don't know everything about Levi. Not everything's been revealed. So there's little hints in here, but you don't have to be familiar. You could read these stories and enjoy them for what they are, which are very well written stories with good characters. But if you are a Brian Keene fan, there are a lot of little things in here. References to the other stories that Levi's in. Hints to what's coming up for Levi. It does leave you with a little bit of a mystery. Some things occur in these two stories that are not resolved as far as Levi goes. The main part of the story is resolved, but there are things with Levi that are not. But so the book is good for whether you're a new fan or an old fan. You're going to find something that you like, and it's all scary looking. Look at that. So Brian Keene, again, absolutely one of my favorite authors. I have not read everything he's written, because there's a lot of stuff that's just hard to get a hold of. But if this shelf were clearer, up here, let's see, from here over to here are the Brian Keene hardbacks and trade paperbacks, and then up there, behind Batman, are the regular mass market paperbacks. And I have had some other things. Like I said, the anthology Is There a Demon in You is actually over on another shelf, but he's got a story in there. Some other things I have where he's got stories, and I kind of have to decide where those are going to go. They don't always just go with his stuff. But anyway, boy, I could just start pulling these off the shelf and talking about them. But I'm reviewing this one and not those, but I will be reviewing some of those at another time. But I would call Brian Keene a working man's writer, not in. I mean, I don't know the guy. It's not at all meant to be derogatory. It's just his characters typically are blue collar. I think that's where he comes from. Brian Keene comes from. He's seems like a blue collar guy, and his characters tend to be blue collar characters. A lot of it. I can't really technically say all, but a lot of it takes place in Pennsylvania. And so it's I'm gonna say down to earth writing, which is an odd thing to say about horror and what's basically a form of fantasy, as opposed to slice of life. I mean, there's fantastical things that go on. You've got, depending on the book you're reading, zombies and giant worms and unkillable mobsters and all sorts of craziness going on. And again, he's got the 13, who I could name a few of those. I can't name all 13 off the top of my head, but they're these entities, and I want to go into all of this, but I'm trying to avoid it. But so he's got the 13. He's got the Labyrinth, this incredibly huge mythology that he's created, and yet his books are incredibly accessible, with great characters. As I said, just blue collar. So maybe that's why I relate a little more. Not that I generally have a problem relating, although I suppose I'm less sympathetic if I'm reading about some rich jackass who's supposed to be the character that I'm supposed to care about, but he's just someone that I don't relate to as far as where they're coming from and their personality. But it seems, with these, it's blue collar guys. It's guys that live I'm in Ohio. A lot of this, as I said, takes place in Pennsylvania. So similar. I used to go to Pennsylvania all the time when I was a kid for camping and fishing. So it's it's kind of hits home for me. Excuse me. And that's one of the many, many reasons that I'm such a big fan. Just a fantastic writer. And see, I'm getting off track, I think. And like I said, I could just talk about all of these books and tie them all together. But I'm supposed to be talking about this because Halloween's coming up, and everybody out there needs something good and scary and good and scary to read. I was going to add a third thing, but I couldn't think of one off the top of my head. And I just recommend this. Like I said, it's nice and short, couple of novellas, inexpensive. Of course, I'll put a link below in the description for this, and maybe if I can find them, I'll put links for Dark Hollow Ghost Walk and A Gathering of Crows. I mentioned Dark Hollow, which is kind of a prequel-ish. At least that's what it says he says in the preface here, is Dark Hollow, which serves as a prequel. Levi is not in that, but it does tie into Levi's first novel, which is Ghost Walk. So I can find links for those. Dark Hollow, Ghost Walk, A Gathering of Crows. I'll throw them in the description below as well. I can't wait for the next Levi Stoltzfus books to come out. But then I can never wait for the next Brian Keene book to come out. Just like I said, one of my top 3 writers. He's up there with Joe. If I had to say, I'd say Joe Lansdale, Brian Keene, Edward Lee. That's just off the top of my head, my 3 favorite authors. I can't recommend it enough. I say pick it up. Pick up anything by Keane, but of course, this is the one I'm talking about today. It's Levi Stoltzfus. I don't know if anybody can give me a clear pronunciation of that, or of Albatwitches. For the longest time, I was blind to this T, and I was calling it Albatwitches. I even wrote it down a few times, and just completely left the T out. But, so there you go. Another book for this Halloween, or anytime. And, as always, if you have any comments, corrections, or questions, please leave them in the comments below. I already mentioned that I'm going to put links in the description so you can pick this up, and you should pick it up. I think that's it for this time. So that's the low budget review show in early October 2014, pushing the horror. It's a beautiful day for night for reading horror. It's chilly, the wind is blowing, it's been raining a little bit, it's got that perfect scent of fall in the air. That's how it is here in Ohio anyway. And I think that's it. So until next time, read more books.